In the year 2405, humanity had conquered its own biology. We were a civilization of the immortal. Decay was a concept found only in history archives. We did not tire, nor did we exhaust ourselves. The ancient fear of doom had vanished. Our bodies were no longer merely biological. They were a perfect corpus of synthetic evolution. I was a historian of the age of flesh. My job was to study the archaic times when people were born biologically. In those dark days, women would endure a pregnancy. They became pregnant and carried life within them, a process we now view as barbaric and inefficient. I studied relics of that time, strange artifacts like the condom, once used to prevent conception or infection. It fascinated me how fragile their existence was. A single symptom could signal the end. A hidden illness could ravage a community. People would moan in agony, powerless against the detriment of their own cells. In my pristine laboratory, I looked at holographic records of broken bones. I saw data on how a simple accident could disable a warrior. Terms like invalid and patient were obsolete. We had no hospitals, only maintenance bays. Whatever dysfunction occurred in our systems was corrected instantly. Diseases like diabetes and obesity were genetically edited out centuries ago. Even hypertension was impossible, as our blood pressure was regulated by nanobots. We did not paralyze under fear or damage. We simply rebooted. But that morning, as I stared at the red sun rising over Sector 7, I felt something impossible. I felt dizzy. It started as a subtle vibration in my head. At first, I thought I was insane. Mental instability was unheard of. I tried to sleep, to enter my regeneration cycle, but I suffered from insomnia. I lay awake, staring at the sterile white ceiling. My skin felt strange, hot and sensitive. Was it an allergy? Impossible. The air was filtered to perfection. Then came the tightness in my chest. It mimicked the historical descriptions of a heart attack. Panic, a cold and foreign fluid, flooded my veins. I checked my internal diagnostics. All systems green. Yet, deep in my joints, I felt a grinding sensation. It felt like arthritis, ancient and rusty. I looked in the mirror. A small red pimple had formed on my forehead. It was a tiny flaw, but in a world of smooth, synthetic skin, it looked like a mountain. Then, the stroke of fear truly hit me. I wasn't the only one. A notification flashed on my retinal display. Sector 7 alert, unknown anomaly. I rushed to the central plaza. The scene was chaotic. It was like a plague from the medieval texts. People were stumbling. Their movements were no longer fluent. They were jerky and uncoordinated. I saw a woman shivering with a high fever. She clutched her head, screaming about a headache. Her neck began to swell rapidly. She fell to her knees and began to choke, gasping for air that her lungs refused to process. Whatever this was, it had the power to injure us, and we had forgotten how to be hurt. I knelt beside the woman. For the first time in centuries, I saw an injury occur in real time. She had fallen hard. Does the synthetic skin hurt? Apparently it did. She began to bleed from her nose. A dark bruise blossomed on her cheek. It was mesmerizing and terrifying. A scar was forming before my eyes, a permanent mark of wound and failure. "Help me," she whispered. The trauma in her voice was raw. It was a traumatic sound, stripped of digital filtering. I touched her neck. There was a hard lump under the skin. She cried out in pain. Pain, the great educator we had banished. It had returned with a vengeance. "This is mortal," I whispered. "We are becoming mortal again." The realization was a heavy blow. This wasn't a glitch. It was a systematic demise of our protection. Someone, or something, had introduced a fatal code. A biological virus adapted for synthetic bodies. It was lethal. I looked around the plaza. Men and women who used to overwork without fatigue were now collapsing. They began to tire within minutes. They began to exhaust their energy reserves. Some looked like a cripple, unable to walk. Others were lame, dragging their legs. I saw a man who seemed to dwarf the others in size, a genetically modified laborer, crumple to the ground, weeping. We were witnessing the return of the biological curse. I needed answers. I ran back to my lab, my legs burning with lactic acid. I hadn't felt this sensation since the simulation drills. I accessed the central mainframe. The code was corrupted. The virus was designed to infect our nanobots. It didn't just break them. It rewrote them to simulate biological failure. It forced us to experience every infection we had erased. I saw the medical reports streaming in. Thousands of cases. Diagnosis, cancer simulation, rapid cell degradation. The virus was making our bodies attack themselves. It was a deliberate detriment to our existence. I found the source signal. It was coming from the old quarter, the museum district where I worked. I grabbed a medical kit, an antique box of bandages and stimulants. I felt like a fraud. I was an invalid pretending to be a savior. I arrived at the museum's basement. There, hooked into the mainframe, was a man. He was old, truly old. He sat in a wheelchair, his legs useless. He was a paraplegic, or close to it. He suffered from paralysis of the lower body. He looked at me with milky eyes. "Why?" I gasped, trying to catch my breath. "Because you forgot," he wheezed. His voice was thin. "You forgot what it means to be alive." He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. "You erased flu. You erased suffering. But without pain, there is no empathy." He tapped the console. "I gave you a gift, the gift of the broken." "You are killing them," I shouted. "This is doom for our species." "No," he smiled, revealing missing teeth. "It is a reminder." He pointed to a screen showing the chaos outside. "Look at them. They are helping each other." I looked. He was right. In the plaza, people weren't just ignoring the fallen. They were holding them. They were comforting those who were dizzy. They were carrying those who were lame. Fear had birthed compassion. "I can stop it," the old man said. "But you must choose. Do you want to return to the cold, unfeeling, immortal state? Or do you want to keep the scars?" I looked at the data. I could reverse the infection. I could heal every wound, every lump, every bruise. I could make them perfect again. But the old man's words haunted me. We had been perfect, but we had been empty. Now, we were suffering, but we were real. The pain was a signal that we were alive. I stepped forward. My hand hovered over the console. My own head was throbbing with a headache. My vision was blurring. I was dying. And in that moment, I felt more alive than I had in 400 years. I made my choice. I didn't purge the virus completely. I modified it. We would heal, but the scars would remain. We would no longer be immune to disease. We would have to learn to treat illness again. We would have to learn to care for the patient. I smashed the console, locking the changes in. The old man smiled one last time before his head slumped forward. His demise was peaceful. He had died of natural causes, a heart attack perhaps, or simply the exhaust of a long, hard life. I walked out of the museum. The sun was setting. My body ached. I was tired. I needed to sleep, not recharge. Sleep. And tomorrow, if I woke up, I would have to work. I would have to live. For the first time, we were truly born.